Hi, thank you for coming on today and speaking to us. So you're account manager at Ripple. Can you just give us a bit of background into what you do at Ripple and how you basically came to be in the role here?
Yeah. So I've done account management for about 6 or 7 years now. So I started out in upholstery manufacturer working for a international furniture manufacturer in China. Then I did a lot of traveling with that. So I thought I wanted to do something that was more UK based. And I think given COVID happening, everything started to come more UK based rather than being international trade. So then I applied for a job at Ripple doing a similar thing, being in manufacturing. And then I also used to be a visual merchandiser for Topshop, so I thought it worked hand in hand, retail and manufacturing. But yeah, so with account management, I basically look after current accounts in the business and help them grow. So we have a lot of our clients like Trespass, Tops, etc. There's a lot more. So I basically nurture them from start to finish, from ordering brand new items, new designs, and feeding it all the way through to it's being delivered in store, and then after service as well, customer service.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so obviously you're one of the first people to ever see the customers. At what point, like, obviously the initial meeting is really important, but what is like the example of a really good successful first meeting, would you say?
This is always a difficult one because I think it very much depends on your client. Mm-hmm. For me, I think it's definitely gelling with the customer on a personal level. Yeah. I think it's the personality, because you can go in there and sell anything you want. You could be the most fantastic salesperson in the UK, but if you don't have that charisma and that personality, you're not going to win the client over. You do have to have that warmth and that human like relationship with them. So for me, when I go, I make sure I have all my information that they want. So they'll probably want some indicative pricing. They'll probably want to understand previous jobs that we've done, examples of what they've done and project costs. So long as if I have all my facts behind me and statistics to show what we're capable of as a business, the rest of it is just natural conversation that happens within the meeting, just to make them understand that you are human and you're not just going to be robotic behind the screen when you leave that initial meeting.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's really important because it just helps the customer feel more comfortable, and it's that trust building as well. I think like you're being integral and authentic.
Yeah, and from me as well, from my perspective, I wouldn't want to go to someone who was very structured and routine, because that's not my personality. If someone's selling me something, I want to be able to have that laugh with them every now and again, and then you can be confident in giving them feedback if you're not happy with something.
So obviously you're involved throughout the process, and you basically, the way that I see it anyway, whenever I see you with customers, is like you're like hand holding them throughout each stage of it.
Yeah.
But based on that, what feedback is vital? Like how important is feedback throughout the whole process from the client?
Yeah, it is important. We get some customers that have been through the process before or a similar process who understand, so they can ask the right questions and they can give you more direction. And then we have other customers where this is completely new to them. So if it's a brand new showroom and they've not done it before, we're trying to prompt them to we ask them the questions that we need. So they might not necessarily give us the feedback without having that question prompted. Yeah. A lot of that comes when you have done your initial creative design and we move into technical. I think a lot of the customers, this then sort of, they don't really, not that they don't understand this process. At the beginning, it's all nice and pretty and we can see what the showroom looks like. When it gets into technical, that even goes over my head because that's with the technical designers. But there is there's certain things that we do need to know from the client, such as weights of products, to make sure health and safety complies. So that's when we sort of guide and handhold the customers to provide us that information. And along with that, they'll give us feedback, which then might sort of change the technical drawings throughout. So that's where the big work happens.
Yeah. See, stuff like that, like I would never even have thought about it. Like you just kind of take it for granted. You're like, anything will kind of work on it, but it's actually making it functional as well as aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So then based on feedback and obviously how vital and important it is there any like standout examples that you have of when client feedback has been really beneficial to a project?
This is a tough one. Yes and no. I feel like the feedback that we get, specifically since I've been at Ripple, so obviously within my 2 years here so far, The feedback that we have been given is mainly from a health and safety team to make sure that the units on the product, like, they meet the requirements for the kit that we're building. A lot of our customers, luckily, have sort of just let us get on with the project. So we have been quite lucky. We've not really had any feedback that's completely changed the course of the project. The feedback is minimal. If it's anything, it might be like a colour change or a layout change. But the main feedback that we get that is crucial is the weight of the product. If they have to leave it in, for example, it's probably easy for me to explain an example. Tops tiles, we've done a huge XL unit for them, which holds what they call their XL tiles, which I don't know the dimensions off the top of my head.
Aren't they like a big massive
They're
ones?
huge. They're huge. So you can imagine the weight of them.
Yeah.
They're not something that the store can pick up and take off. So we have to do it on a roller track. So that has to be tested in the store. So we have to send a prototype to them. They have to test it for at least 24, 48 hours to make sure that everything's working. Then that feedback is crucial to us because that would dictate then whether we have to make technical changes or not to the unit.
Yeah. So obviously, like, communication is a massive skill involved with your role. And I know from you being with clients, like, they love having that direct line of communication with you. Yeah. But what other skills do you think are vital in your account management role that you think customers really benefit from?
Multitasking, 100%. And I think that not only do the customers benefit from that, I think any account manager needs to probably have that skill. I don't just focus on that one customer at that one time. I might have 5 or 6 projects going on at the same time. So I have to come in the morning and be very diverse at what my priority is for what customer. So when a customer is throwing a lot of questions at me on the project, I've got to make sure I go back with all of them. So so not only communication, organisation, time management, just making sure you're sticking to the project path. So at the start of the project, I would usually do like a timeline plan so the customer can have expectations of when dates will land. So that'll go from initial concept, indicative costing. It'll include when I need their sign off, because if the customer doesn't give me a sign off on that specific date, they need to know that that's going to push the project out. It's not because we've not met any dates. It's just because it's just a timing thing. They might need longer to review it. The client might be on holiday. So I think once we've got all that project plan in place, then I have to do a lot of internal chasing, which the client probably wouldn't say. But then I have to make sure that technical are working to their timelines, costings are working to their timelines, production are working to their timelines. So there's a lot of juggling about that you need to do internally that the client probably doesn't see so much of, although I'm sure that they do appreciate that it goes on behind the scenes.
So obviously things don't always go like smoothly and to plan. Has there ever been a time when maybe there's been a challenge internally when we couldn't figure out something for the customer and then the customer has helped us like reach that decision?
Yeah. So I wouldn't say it happens a lot, but with anyone who works in manufacturing industry or any trade industry knows that when you're purchasing materials, you know, it's going to be a lead time on things. And if that lead time's delayed, anywhere from shipping internationally to shipping in Europe, it only takes one small issue along the way in transit to have a knock-on effect for everything. We try and caveat that in the time plan that I do. So I try and give ourselves a little bit of grace and flexibility. But there has been occasions, obviously, where things haven't arrived into us in time, which obviously has held up the production. So the production then has had to start later. So the end date has been later. So I think for me, I'm quite honest with my customers. I like to be open with them from the beginning and explain possible situations that could happen. I'll always say to them indicatively, costing wise, because I don't like to commit to anything in advance. Again, to timelines, I'll always say it'll be approximately this time of the month, but I won't give you a date until we know it's physically starting on the production shop floor. There'll be times where a customer does need us to say, no, I need something being installed on X date, which is fine. We can work to that and we'll always bend over backwards, and we do work with other people and other suppliers to get that in. But yeah, the challenge is delays that affect us, and then obviously if we have to make a decision and the customer won't be flexible on the dates for their reasons, they might need it in the stores at that time, we may have to come up with an alternative solution of providing materials from elsewhere, which then obviously has a cost impact. Most of the time, with it being something that is out of the customer's control, we'll either speak with the customer and say, are you willing, if you want it ASAP, are you willing to, take the cost difference? Or sometimes as Ripple as a business, we would absorb it. So there's a lot of factors that come into that. But again, I think it's just about being completely transparent with your customer and letting them know all these, if anything arises, just keeping them in the loop along the way, rather than hitting them at the end with your project's going to be delayed by a week.
Yeah.
They just need to understand why. I think when they understand why, they can justify it a bit more to whoever they need to feed that back to.
Yes, definitely. I think that like transparency is so vital, especially from your point of view, because you want to be integral as well.
Yeah.
And you don't want to like pull the wool over anyone's eyes.
Yeah.
It's just not like what you value.
No.
Either.
And I think that's the one good thing that Ripple, that we do in the team, in the sales team, is because we all do have that relationship with our clients and our customers now, and even new customers that come into us, giving them that transparency from the start with costings, how things work, with timelines. I just think it gives the customer reassurance to know that they're not just being sold the dream, because it's very easy for someone out there, design companies and manufacturing companies, to say, we can do this, we can do that, not a problem, we can do it for you. And then before you know it, they're being let down step by step. Whereas if we can try and explain to them what the ideal process is, however, there are factors that could cause things to happen, we try and avoid that by all means, but just to make it you visible and you aware, I think they do appreciate that. And I think that's one thing that I feel our customers come back to us for, because they trust that the dates that we give them, they know that they're going to be met, and if they're not going to be met, they'll know in enough time in advance that they can move things around on their end.
Yeah, because even from whenever I was speaking with customers, like doing insight interviews and stuff, one thing that they said was, like with other agencies that they've worked with in the past that maybe have been unsuccessful in completing their project, they get this really pretty picture and the concept's great, and then they aren't really clued in on the cost and the effort that goes in behind making that a reality. So then whenever that's not what the end project looks like, they're really disappointed then.
And I think that's the thing as well, because it's very easy to put a creative design in front of a customer and say, wow, this is what you could have. But you also need to be realistic with the customers and say, this is what you could have, but this is whereabouts it's going to cost you. You've got to appreciate that customers have budgets, and they have to do sign-off processes, or they might only have so much to spend in their financial year. So, for example, when we've had a new customer recently inquiring about a showroom, I know that we've done 3 or 4 showrooms in the last 6 months. So I sent them links to our case studies, and I also said, this is what the project entailed. It was creative, design, technical, manufacture and installation, which is obviously the 4 key things that we would do. And that project itself costs between X and X. So at least then they can go away and decide if that's what they want to do. Because I think when customers are coming to us with anything brand new and they've not really done anything like this before, showroom, they might have bought a new piece of property and they want to create the showroom, but they don't know where to start. It might take a lot of people back because they might not have actually allowed for that budget. So again, just transparency from the start to make sure that they understand what's included.
So obviously, based on all of the feedback that you get throughout the whole process, the feedback is a 2-way loop. And I know you've covered on whenever you say like being transparent and open about what's going on within the project pipeline. But how do you think that Ripple and yourself have kind of created that environment where that feedback loop is continuous and they're comfortable enough to say things to the clients and the clients vice versa?
I think that's not just a Ripple thing. I do think anyone who's in an account management role, which fundamentally, there's a lot of different account management roles out there, I appreciate that, but fundamentally account management, looking after your one sole customer. Even in my previous job to this, you would always have to have that 2-way conversation with the customer. You cannot produce something, manufacture something for your end client without going back and forth on phone calls, emails, meetings. You really need to get them to understand what they want out of it. You can't, there's probably people in the industry who take a brief, don't speak to the client and deliver the brief. It might go really well and successful. The customer might be like, oh, that's not what I was expecting.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a couple of minutes out of your day just to drop an email or to ring them, just to know that you're on the right track and the customer's happy. And also, I think from a reassurance perspective, I have a lot of clients that I look after. So it's nice to know that I've always got a back. It's nice to know that the customer will know what I'm doing. And then at least I know that, oh, I'm not going to get challenged on that at a later date, which is then going to knock me back in my work. So I like to keep the customer in the loop, probably from my role specifically. I know that it's keeping me in the right direction. It's not setting me back in anything. Yeah. So just basically like a little cover.
Yeah. So obviously you work very closely with each stakeholder involved in each area of the whole end-to-end process.
Yeah.
But obviously your main priority is the client and the client being happy.
Yeah.
But we've obviously got like the designers and their expertise, and they love to have like creative freedom if it's possible.
Yeah.
But is there any scenarios where, say for example, like a designer might want to like skew a project in a certain way because they think it's beneficial from like their point of view, but then obviously you have to balance like budgets and everything like that. How do you manage that?
So I would get the brief from the customer and understand what it is that they're actually after. Then I'd go and speak with the design team. We'd have like a full sit down of what's expectations, what to do. The way I manage that is I do want the creative team to lead the direction. In a sense of I've given them the brief. The customer might either give me very specific requirements or they might be a bit loose because they might not know themselves. So I would rather the creative team do that because that's their area, that's their expertise. If they start wanting to go off too far down a wacky design route, I would always say to them that's fine, but from a time and cost perspective, you need to also provide me with what I need, if that makes sense. So obviously we have to pay designers to do their job. So if they want to go down a route that's slightly off tangent to what the brief is, I'm happy for them to do that and provide options, but there needs to be a negotiation of that was probably more your decision of you wanting to do that rather than my brief. And so it's just managing their expectations as well, because I love that the designers come up with, you know, completely different ideas and the customer does, but the chances are that has a cost implication to it, which then I know the end customer won't go with. And I think that's the difficulty when you're in sales, because the designers don't deal with the end customer. So they just deal with the design. I always go back to, if you're having a house extension, which I've had done in the past, I know to go to my architect for a design drawing. That's it. I pay for them for that drawing and I bring it back in-house and then I tender it out to builders and electricians. Everything is done in-house with our customers. So I'm the person that's having to tender all of that extra work out. So I have to manage the drawings as well, because the end client isn't just paying for the drawing, they're paying for the whole project as one. So it does have to have a flow, if I'm explaining that very well.
So look into the future in terms of how you see account management evolving. What do you think is kind of the key trends, or like in terms of how customers have changed over time? Because I know like COVID, obviously your relationship and how you communicated with customers changed. But if there is any change that you'd like to see, or if not, like why fix what's not broken kind of thing either.
And I think that's the thing. I think Ripple, we've got a really good foundation now in our offices. We've got 2 account managers that look after everything. We've got a sales director, and obviously we work really closely with the commercial director. We're all sort of involved in all our accounts. I think as the business grows, there's probably going to be more scope for account managers to focus on projects that come through that are more unit based. And so for example, Tops Tiles might order 150 units from us, and it's just a churn in production and making sure it goes out, versus an account manager who is probably more showroom led, and that's where your account manager almost blurs into a project manager role. And so at the minute I sort of do the two. You could class it as project management when it's a full project, or account management. To me, they're the same thing.
Yeah.
Especially in this industry and in this job, they might be different for other companies. But I think that's where the direction will end up going, because you can definitely see a divide in the business now for customers who are wanting showrooms, brand new from scratch, hand holding from start to finish, versus existing customers who need product for new kit to merchandise their new product on, which would be 100 to 200 units going through the factory. It still needs the same sort of management, but it's just like two completely different things. You don't necessarily need a time plan and to get involved with design, creative, technical for that. But with the project side of things, that's where you're constantly having that back and forth communication with the customer to make sure it's happy. So I think going back to it, the future for Ripple would be, as the business grows, you have an account manager and you have an account manager / project manager, and it'll be like sort of divided by that, really, because I think that'll help the business grow.
No, that's great. And I think that's the thing as well. I've seen how flexible that you guys can be. So you always suss what the customer wants and how much involvement they want from you guys.
Yeah.
And then you can adapt to that.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, okay. Well, thank you so much for your time.
You're
really
welcome.
appreciate it.